Iowa's News Now Sports brings you black and gold glory. Your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
Eye on the Hawks with an eye on the Cyhawk. It is Iowa State week across the entire state. Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell here with Eye on the Hawks. Owen, everything that we think we've learned about the Hawkeyes and Cyclones, throw it out because that's just what happens in rivalry games.
Throw the records out the window,
There you
especially after week one, that you played a Mountain West team and you played an FCS opponent where both coaches seemed to go in, get what they needed to get done in the first half, and then kind of hold their cards close to their vest in the second half. And so this is never a week one game, it seems like, Iowa and Iowa State, but it almost feels like a week one game sometimes.
It's always, I think it's typically the second game in the non-con. So yeah, you see what you got, figure things out, and then throw everything out again because it's a rivalry game. Mike, your biggest takeaway is watching both Iowa and Iowa State in week one.
My biggest takeaway is when I rewatched the Iowa State game on replay, and people have said this, so I'm not the first one, but they looked more like Iowa than Iowa did. They scored a defensive touchdown. Their punting was amazing, a 56-yard field goal. We'll talk about the special teams later, but that's a legitimate battle this year. It's something that won Iowa a couple Cyhawk games, with that fumbled punt at the end of the game a few years ago when the weather delay and stuff like that. So they look solid on defense. They've got some real dudes, and their big question mark, too, is the same as Iowa's, is can you run the ball? Can your offensive line improve?
Yeah, it's always some answers in week one, but then plenty of questions still to figure out. But obviously the one question on everybody's mind is how do the players feel about this rivalry as it continues to evolve with new players every year and whatnot. From the Hawkeye standpoint, ranges from everything from, hey, it's just another game, to who is raising these Cyclone youths?
It's like in high school, the team, that team next door, you don't want to lose those guys. You just don't, and I'm sure they feel the same way. And Bear Bryant used to say it. He talked about guys having to go home and they go to the pharmacy and they got to answer why they lost to Auburn. And Alabama would have to answer that.
You know how important it is to the kids that are from Iowa and all the guys that are. I've heard stories about people not talking to their Iowa State friends. At school and stuff.
I've heard just plenty of middle finger stories, honestly. So I'm pretty excited to get into that environment.
Probably just the derogatory language that was thrown over the fence by so many people, you know what I mean? I was kind of like, oh, God. I'm old enough and I can take it, but I was looking around going, some of these guys are pretty young.
Sure.
And I just found it really interesting. There's like 9 or 10-year-old kids swearing and things like that over the fence, and it just makes you think, it's like, who are these guys' parents, you know what I mean? Because I know if that was my little brother saying it, my mum would go crazy, same with my dad.
It doesn't bother me at all, so anything that they say to me, it doesn't bother me. Obviously, I've had some encounters, but it's just the fans being the fans, so they're going to, again, like I said, they're going to talk trash, but it doesn't really bother me. It honestly kind of fuels me.
Have you heard about what their fans are going to be like walking into Jack Trice?
It's going to be pretty toxic environment, but, it's going to be loud, and, you live for that, so it's going to be fun.
I want to double back on what Tory said there and go to the conversation you and I think you and I both had yesterday with our colleague Jake Bryn from WOI. Yeah. He's a lifelong Cyclone fan, and his family's had season tickets for years, but he wasn't even allowed to go to Cyhawk games until he was like a sophomore in high school because his parents just knew that was such a toxic, poisonous environment where they might see somebody get arrested, or a fan.
A 9-year-old might use a swear.
He said he was at a game in Kinnick once where he had a beer thrown at him because he just stood up and cheered, and so it's different.
You throw out the record books and throw whatever. I was so taken aback that Tory, again, he's old enough, he can handle it. It was just these 9 and 10-year-olds. What are they doing? It was. He just couldn't believe it. Such a whispered, breathless, incredulousness.
The first Cyhawk game I went to as a student back when I went in 2009, I believe. You're walking down Lincoln Way, and to get to Jack Trice, you got to go by all these frats. And the frat guys are just sitting at the lawn, and they can't go on the sidewalk. I don't know if it's a frat rule or whatever. They're just swearing at you. I'm sure it's the same in Iowa, but the frats aren't on the way to Kinnick, so it's a little bit less of a wall, like that jauntlet that you have to walk through.
It's like that in Minneapolis too. If you're going to TCF Bank or Huntington Bank Stadium now, or to the Metrodome back in the day, just wherever you walk. If you're in black and gold and you're walking past maroon and gold, that's gonna hit. So
walk of shame.
Yep. Your first Cyhawk memory. Any Cyhawk memories as you've gotten into covering things growing up on your side of the state?
I was trying to think about the first time I went to a Cyhawk game because growing up, I mean, I have kind of a different background because neither of my parents grew up in Iowa. They met at Colorado State and then moved out here. So we were raised Broncos fans, and I kind of followed both teams, and so I never really got big into the rivalry growing up. I think my first one probably was as an employee, I think, of K-Meg over in Sioux City, so probably like 2017, I think, was my first Cyhawk game. Favorite, though, I think just for the unique factor was that game that had the, 2 or 3 different like rain and lightning delays and stuff in 2019. Yeah. That was just like, was that the overtime game, or how did that one?
That was the one where Devontae Young recovered the muff punt,
Yeah, I think that was it just because of the sheer uniqueness of that game was probably one of my favorites.
The first game I ever covered in college was the 08 Cyhawk game. We were talking about this on Tuesday during media availability. Andy Brodell returns a punt that was kind of the crown jewel of what was a bit of a sloppy game. It was a rainy day, not nearly like 2019, but a little messy. And there's a shot from the Gazette where I'm obviously standing on the photog line on the back of the end zone by the player tunnel, and I was just kind of shadowing that day. And so you've got this row of photographers and camera people all lined up getting the dog pile on top of Andy Brodell, who takes back this punt, and it's me just holding a reporter's notebook, just like, and journalistic integrity went out the door.
Return touchdown, you're writing on your notebook.
Yeah, that was great. And then I covered the 2009 one in Ames. Always stuck out to me. Was it Sash had 3 picks? Sash and Greenwood at least.
Sash and Greenwood did, yeah.
Wow.
Austin Arnaud was the quarterback.
Austin Arnaud, they picked him off 4 times.
Ames side quarterback.
Yep. Keenan Davis had his first career touchdown, which was
35-0 or
35-7. Yeah. And Brandon Wager, that was kind of the Brandon Wager game of like,
yes,
okay, Sioux City Heelan's pride might be doing well there. And then 2011 still sticks out to me, the Steele Jantz game.
Oh,
they had beat
UNI about that.
They had beat UNI. Terrell Rennie and David Johnson was a freshman on that team the week before, and it was this crazy comeback win. Steele Jantz rolling right and just launching one to Josh Lenz to knock off the Panthers, and then you have this 44-41 just incredible battle there back and forth, and Steele Jantz was Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week, and people were already kind of interest peaked of like, who's this Steele Jantz kid that kind of came out of nowhere? And
did you ever hear the joke afterwards?
Go ahead.
You still have a Jans next year is what they were telling me. I was in Ames. That was the last time I was in Ames for a Cyhawk game.
I just remember doing that Monday was the first sportscast I ever anchored, and I remember I think the cryon or the graphic we used was Man of Steel. I mean, just because I didn't have any creativity, it was right there.
It's not bad.
But there are some Cyhawk memories for sure. So you will, I'm sure people have plenty last year too of just the mess of a game that was in terms of weather again in a 10-7 Cyclone victory.
Before we move on the favorite, the game I mentioned earlier was my first as a visiting fan. That Brodell one was my freshman year, so I was there. But my favorite all-time game, and this seems like nothing, is the 2003 game because it broke the streak, and I was a middle schooler at the time, and ever since I started watching Hawkeye football, we'd lose to Iowa State. And in Fort Dodge is where I'm from.
Especially after 2002.
Yeah.
Where you're up and Seneca does Seneca things, and
in Fort Dodge, it's about half Cyclone, half Hawkeyes, I'd say. Maybe more Cyclones because it's close to Ames. And everyone would just ride on the Hawkeye fans when Iowa State week came. So that first week I got to experience a win, which is kind of crazy because before that it was 15 straight with Hayden. I was just giving it to all my Cyclone friends in Fort Dodge. So
Mike's seen some stuff in his life at that point. Certainly a fun one. 2015 sticks out to me. I wasn't there, but I think that was the first Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt game that was on Fox. And I still remember Gus being in his element. Joel was great. Just the commentary I was watching back in Michigan. It was right after Tyler Sash had passed away, so that was an emotional week.
Was that the C.J. Beathard 44-yard run that he had out of?
C.J. Beathard, look at the quarterback run. Yeah.
Had a touchdown to Riley McCarron, I believe, and
dropped it into
Matt
a shoebox.
Vandenberg.
That was Vandenberg had a big game. That was just a huge week. That was the week where after the Illinois State game, that was the statement, getting down early and coming back. And again, Gus and Joel on a game that ups the ante a little bit. And I think that might have been the first Hawkeye game they had done together as a team. And now look where they are 8 years later.
As much as we talk about the players and the things they look forward to, memories, things like that, I will say I think I've been to every Cyhawk game since 2017, just as an employee. But like it's just such a treat to be a part of that rivalry and that history in a very small way from the sideline, getting a chance to see that environment and walk the sidelines in those games.
It's just a different energy, and you heard about that a little bit. It's just what that energy can bring from fans and whatnot. And you heard Seth Anderson talk about him being told about the environment. More from Seth in a little bit. Quite the development on a short little 10-second soundbite making the rounds on the internet. But let's go to the 2023 edition of the Cyhawk game, and we touched on this a little bit. Both teams taking care of business, doing what they needed to do. First thoughts coming in, particularly an ISU defense that's been talked up quite a bit. TJ Tampa, you could argue, is the best cornerback in the Big Ten, best defensive back, or Big 12, I should say, out there. An Iowa offense that showed some flash, but people are still ravenous for a little more. What are your first thoughts going into Saturday?
I think it has the potential to be a close game, although I don't know if I think it really will be. I do think that Iowa has the better overall team this season. I think that Iowa State was really fired up last week because there were people thinking that Northern Iowa might come out and give them a test, and they
people saw that 21-point spread when it first came out, and yeah, people's eyes went wide. Like, what are we going?
Yeah, and so I think that they really came out with some fire last week to open the season, but I think that Iowa held back enough, and they're going to come out and really open some eyeballs this week and get back into the top 25. And yeah, I think when I was talking on the Eye on the Hawks TV show earlier with Andre Dawson and Kyle Knock, I think 31-7 is the final I predicted for Iowa winning this game.
Gotcha. All right. Well, more picks coming in later in the show as well. Mike, any thoughts on what you're expecting Saturday?
Yeah, I expect, I know the under's like really low. I expect a low-scoring game, though. These two defenses are, I don't even know which one's better. I was watching, the Iowa State game on replay, and they got some good defensive linemen. Tyler Nwanu, I don't know how to say his name, but he is just everywhere, number 11. And Dominique Orange, awesome. They have a lot of good names, too. Ben Nickel, I think he's the nickel back, and he was like a second-team defensive back, but he's, a senior. So he made 2 or 3 pass breakups in a row against UNI, and Cooper had the pick, I believe his name. Jeremiah Cooper had the pick, 6 right off the bat.
2 picks in the game, I think.
2 picks, yep. Their secondary could rival Iowa's. I know there's a lot of talent on both defenses. So,
did you see the picture of the two guys next to each other that are Hammond Bacon?
Yeah, I did.
Another good name. Anyway.
Yeah, that's perfect Iowa stuff. Cade McNamara at the podium on Tuesday for Iowa admitted there were some plays left out there against Utah State. I think anybody who watched the game saw just a little bit off. I asked him about it. He says he doesn't think they were too far from getting a couple of those bigger plays to hit.
Say you left a few plays out there, but did it feel like you weren't too far off from hitting a couple of those?
Oh, no. We were right there. I think, it was just, it was our first game, and no one was expecting it to be completely perfect, but, we definitely, based on the way that we've been practicing and the way we've been moving the ball, I think, a lot of the guys, when, you don't execute to 100%, guys are going to want to do that as a competitor. So going back and watching the film, that's how we felt. And, we're just doing everything we possibly can to clean those things up.
Plays we were talking about there, the ones that stuck out to me, there was a go route to, and we talked about this Sunday too during the live pod, go route to Caleb Brown that just, about a step short. Nico had one just go through his arms in the back of the end zone. Great throw from Cade. There was another one, I think, on that same drive as they were trying to score before they had to settle for the field goal at the end of the first half. A little swing out to LaShawn on a bit of a wheel route that literally was just outside of his hands. And that was the most demonstrative I saw Cade all game, was after missing that one. That was the one, go up 21-3 instead of 17-3 at the end of the half. But again, you got film now. You've been watching it, and, as he said right there, what we thought we were going to see on film in terms of just being right on the tip of it is what they saw. So it didn't sound like they were too worried about what you didn't get to see from that offense.
I think that's what's fun about always playing this game in week 2 is that these teams get a chance to go out there, have a little bit of a warm-up game, and then come out and maybe play a little bit more clean in week 2 when they face off against each other.
There's a little discussion, too, about his health and what he can do, again, with that right leg right now, whether or not he's more comfortable in shotgun or under center. He says that doesn't really matter, doesn't really hamper him. He and Kirk both talked about the fact that the QB sneak, which is, again, the cornerstone of an Iowa rushing attack sometimes, is probably off the table right now. I asked Kirk about whether or not Hayden Large, a 6'5" fullback, if that can maybe remedy the situation. He said maybe they take that to the drawing board. So we don't really know about what opportunity will come there in those 4th and short situations. Again, they tried to run it, I believe, in the first quarter still, and got stopped, and that was one of those missed opportunities. Speaking of opportunities, back to Seth Anderson, of course, scored the first touchdown of 2023 on the second play of the game, was very excited about that. We heard him show off a little confidence in the postgame when he said, hey, the minute we called that play, I knew it was a touchdown. Well, he was asked about what he sees from Iowa State on Tuesday, and here you go.
What are you seeing on film from Iowa State?
A lot of opportunity, for sure.
In what way?
In a good way.
Confident. So, I shared that clip on Twitter yesterday, Tuesday. This morning, Chris Hassel, well-known Iowa fan, works at CBS Sports, formerly ESPN and WHO in Des Moines, and he framed it as didn't expect the Iowa offense to have bulletin board material, but here we are. And so there's been quite the discussion in the comments and the replies of, that's not bulletin board material. That's him saying, hey, there's an opportunity for us to measure ourselves against a really good secondary that TJ Tampa's leading. Or is it bulletin board material? Because again, he's got that twinkle in his eye. And Seth is a super confident guy. It's in his genes. He's a big flip, I believe, is what we're supposed to start calling him now, according to Nico Raggiani. How did you read his comments?
Truthfully, I did not see it as bulletin board material when I first heard it. I think I was just kind of stepping in there, and I heard it as like him trying not to be too detailed in his response to the reporters trying to ask
very short answers from him on everything. Yeah.
Yes, and so that's how I kind of saw it. Just like, some opportunity out there. Maybe good opportunity. I don't think he was saying like, oh yeah, they stink, and I'm really going to light them up. I think he was just trying to maybe deflect and try not to talk about the game too much. So I was kind of in the same boat, but as we learned, there's bulletin board opportunity everywhere. By the way, I didn't know this. David Eichholt was telling us this yesterday that he was in here last week and he'd had that quote that I loved about like, hey, Iowa coaches have to come out there and respect their opponent. Luckily, I'm in a position where I don't have to. And I posted that on Twitter. And apparently, Utah State played that in their locker room. David is saying
no way.
That.
Yeah. So he used to live in Utah and says he knows some people within the program. They're like, yeah, that made it into the locker room. So maybe this does. Mike, what did you think of Seth's comments?
Yeah.
Bulletin board or respect?
See, I don't think personally it's bulletin board material, but Mitch and I were talking this morning, like, teams can say that and take it, and you could take that in a way like there's holes in the defense, right? That's one way you could do it. So I could see, like, on Saturday, someone hits Seth or breaks up a pass. Where's the opportunity now? Stuff like that. It's Mitch brought it up this morning, like the Michael Jordan documentary.
I took that personally.
Yeah, I took that personally. Like, they're going to take whatever they need, and it probably is, but I don't think Seth meant it that way.
Yeah, which Iowa fans even did for that whatever soundbite that the Utah State quarterback said something about, like, their defense isn't too complicated.
Exactly.
I heard an Iowa fan yelling at their quarterback like, oh, you thought our defense was easy, is that right? Are we easy now? And it's like, that's not even what he said. Yeah. But it's like, even fans love to just twist people's words into a way that just turns into bulletin board material.
The frame is everything. One man's admiration or respect for a challenge and opportunity is another person's, they don't respect us at all.
Which gives credence to why it is that these players come out and are so tight-lipped with us as media sometimes, because they're like, gosh, what am I going to say that's going to get twisted around to be bulletin board material?
That was some of the funnier replies were just simply, well, that's the last time we see Seth Anderson at media availability.
Smile did most of the talking, it seemed like. If you're taking it like that, but he smiles a lot. He's
a super
got a great
happy
smile.
kid. And again, with the debut he had and him getting to an opportunity, we talked about this earlier too. Earlier in a podcast, we tried to predict who of the starting two wide receivers were going to be Saturday. Both of you said it was going to be Nico and Deontay just based on seniority. I think I said it was going to be Nico and Seth, and it ended up being Deontay and Seth. So none of us were.
Wow.
And Eric All was split out to the right. So none of us had Eric All in there. But so again, Seth, as he's shown, is going to be a major player in all of this. Now to the other side of things, Iowa's defense against ISU's offense. Again, some sparks from Rocco in his first career start. Iowa gives up the late touchdown on the drive that maybe skews the perception of the statistics a little bit, but is this more about, I'm guessing I'm getting ahead of myself. We won't cut that. Let everybody see the warts. What are we expecting out of this matchup here? Again, just a second career start for an Iowa State quarterback coming in against an Iowa defense that maybe wants to show a little bit more.
I do think that Iowa's defense is going to handle them comfortably. I think that maybe I'm still just analyzing the Iowa State UNI game too much in my head. I think that Iowa State got that early pick six against UNI, and
Momentum's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, UNI was just on their heels for the rest of the half and played, an okay second half. And so I think that was the biggest factor that made that game a little bit more lopsided last week. But I do think that Iowa's defense has enough spark, enough talent that they're going to go out there and play well against Iowa State's offense. That group is still maybe learning to gel. Rocco is still, this is just going to be a second start as a Cyclone. I think there's still a lot of guys that are kind of just learning their paces out there.
Yeah. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I think Iowa's defense, it's a known commodity. Their running game looked all right against UNI. How will it do against, a vastly better defensive line and Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson? Can Nick play more of a run defense? We heard from Jay last week that Nick was playing coverage all game, and that's why he only had two or three tackles. So I think they're probably going to try it and get the ball out wide, pretty early. I think Iowa will probably have more chances at getting sacks compared to last week when Cooper Legas was just throwing it in 2 seconds, into the reads. But yeah, I still think it's going to be low scoring on the Iowa State offense, and same way on the other side.
Yeah, we'll hear a little bit more about having to go up against an up-tempo offense on top of 90-degree heat coming up from Kyler Fisher in a little bit. This is the question I thought I was reading as I was getting mixed up in the rundown here. Special teams, it could be a big day for special teams. We talked about great punting, a long field goal for Iowa State. Caleb Johnson started the game off in Iowa City with a great kick return. Tory had a punt blocked and it still went 37 yards. He got a field goal from Drew Stevens. Who is feeling better about their special teams coming into this game? Or if you ask me, you're both feeling pretty darn good.
It's funny, the other day when we talked about that opening kickoff return, I'd completely forgotten about that play until you mentioned it the next day, just because of the touchdown to Seth that happened 2 plays later. Yeah. It's it kind of got forgotten, but that was the one that set up Seth's first touchdown. But as a whole, special teams, I don't know. I mean, Iowa State's definitely feeling confident right now with their game. They historically have maybe, even though Matt Campbell likes to say otherwise, have not been great at special teams the last few years. So I think they definitely have more confidence. But as far as who's got the better one right now, I'd still give it to Iowa and their experience with Tory Taylor and with Drew Stevens. They've got the experience there.
Sure, yeah. And we've seen Cooper make plays on punt return, and then if Caleb's back there doing his thing too, just another weapon. Your thoughts, Mike?
I think you'd have to feel better if you're Iowa State, only because I do think they struggled last year a lot. And I think they missed a couple late field goals that would have given them wins. And if you want, we have a soundbite from Matt Campbell if he kind of disagrees with the notion that Iowa State didn't have a good special teams last year, if you guys want to hear it.
Let's hear it.
Bring it up.
Again, I think the myth is that we've not been good on special teams, which is a farce. When we've had great specialists, we've been really good. And I think what you see is a sophomore punter that's growing in. You saw a freshman last year. You see a senior kicker. You saw a true freshman last year. And then, I think you look at it and you say, man, we're a lot better with our wisdom and our age. And when we've had Mevis and we've had all those guys, we've been really good.
No one's in their corner for their players more than Matt Campbell, and he makes valid points there. Also, anytime a college coach can use the word farce, I am fully supportive of that. That's wonderful.
That brings up a question, though, because I brought this up to Mike earlier, that it's like, is he in his player's corner if he made that comment about, we've been good when we have good specialists?
Now he is.
Yeah. I'm like, is he dogging his players that he had previously that were missing kicks or whatever?
It sounded like a lot more. Again, he pointed out the fact that it was young guys and
Well, they went out and got a new kicker too.
Exactly.
From Nebraska, I believe. This Contreras is from
was
it.
different. Kirk did the same thing, talking about his guys going into last year against South Dakota State. The fact that it was a line that hadn't played a whole lot. Connor Colby had 11 starts out there, and that it was a lot of new faces in there getting kind of thrown in. And even says 2 years ago or 2 years before that, when Connor was going in for the first time, Connor wasn't ready. They just they needed a dude in there. Talked about having one scholarship wide receiver. So I think that's what he's getting at, is that, like, manage the expectations based on the experience, because you throw any 18, 19-year-old out there, unless they're superhuman, like, yeah, they're probably going to struggle getting into the collegiate level. Iowa is out of the top 25 despite the win against Utah State. They are still technically the 26th ranked team in the country according to the Associated Press. Is this more about how ugly Iowa won against Utah State, or you see Duke knocking off Clemson, Colorado, and receipts being kept all over Boulder, or them knocking off TCU, and they've got Nebraska this week? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But bigger factor in the Hawkeyes dropping out, what other teams did or what they are perceived to not have done?
Yeah, I think definitely it's more on what the other teams did than on Iowa's appearance. I think that anybody who's an AP voter who looks at those polls, I think that they know, like, all right, Iowa just did what they had to do, and that's kind of what we expect out of them. But after the games that Duke and Colorado played, you had to put those guys in the top 25. So normally I think, yeah, Iowa probably would have stayed at 25 or maybe moved up a spot. But with some of the other shakeups across the country, it just kind of happened that they fell out to basically the number 26 spot. I mean, realistically, they're the number one team receiving votes.
Move one spot, yeah, for sure. Again, moving on from Utah State, but this is a game that, believe it or not, they're going to take a lot away from for a long stretch of the season. We talked about playing up against an up-tempo offense in temperatures that I believe hit 92 degrees in Iowa City on Saturday. You've got maybe a little extra conditioning from that, according to Kyler Fisher, and then talked to Luke Lachey about finally getting a set of film that you can use that's not maybe pieced together from that week one scouting, trying to find just whatever angle you can on anything. You've got legitimate film. So Utah State, maybe looked at as a group of five school and just one of those non-con games that you throw away and move away from after you're done with it. But it sounds like it could have legs moving forward, the impact that it's going to leave for the Hawkeyes.
Just those circumstances, playing up tempo in heat, does that help prep you guys for the rest of the season in any way?
Oh, for sure. Tempo, and definitely with the heat. Tempo it sucks to play against, because you always got to be out there. You always got to be hustling, sprinting back and forth every couple of seconds, because you never know when they're going to snap the ball. And having that as the first game of the season, has definitely gotten our defense, mentally ready to come out to anything that the team brings us.
Does prep get easier after week one? Again, we were talking about a team that had 60 transfers. I know defense was watching film on 4 different teams, trying to figure out what this OC was doing and all that. Does it get easier now that, okay, we've got film on a team that played 3 days ago?
Yeah, definitely. I think that when you have that film, it's nice. With Utah State, there were some new defensive coordinators and everything. It is helpful to be able to watch the personnel you're going against, and so I feel like it does get a bit easier. But at the end of the day, it's all preparation, and you got to be ready every week.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said, just my opinion, of week one. Again, a team that had 60 new players and has some shuffling. Head coach is still the same, but you change one thing, you can change a lot of things. And for a team like Iowa, who's going to play a specific way, we've established that for over 25 years under Kirk Ferentz, you're going to get a little bit of everything the opening week. You could get that Indiana game from 2 years ago. You could get 7-3 without a touchdown last year. You could get the loss that we saw against Northern Illinois in 2013. Or you could get 2 blocked field goals against UNI to win in 2009. It can be a little bit of everything for sure.
Yeah, just never know what you're going to get out there. Anything else to add about?
Let me tell you about not knowing what you're going to get. I went 0-6 last week in our picks with the spread. Clearly, I need to do more research. Hopefully, I have, or maybe we should just stop using spreads altogether. I'll start making excuses right away. Mike, you got the week one records. I've already revealed mine.
Yeah, you were 0-6. I was
you.
1-5, so it wasn't that much better. And Owen was 2-4, I believe.
Nothing says trust our opinion and analysis like a combined
18.
Well, we'll say this though: the spreads really killed us because there were a lot of big spreads, and we were thinking, a lot of teams would cover, like Iowa, like Illinois, who had to kick a late field goal to beat Toledo. They went on 4th and 4 and had to complete a giant pass to even stay alive in that game. I'm blanking on another one, but all those games were a lot closer than we thought. Purdue lost.
Daniel Jackson's toe helped Minnesota go to 1-0.
Yeah, that was an amazing catch. That
kid,
probably the catch of the year in week one.
That was
good.
insane.
He is good. So, all right, Big Ten West, run us down, Mike.
All right, we got first a game on another Big 10, Big 12 matchup. We've got Illinois at Kansas and Lawrence on Friday night at 6:30.
Kaysen is terrified of it. Has been
Kansas
for a
is a
month.
3-point favorite. Over/under is 58.
Yeah.
Just for a little tidbit.
Luke Altmaier was really good for Illinois. I mean, it's going to get swallowed up in the fact that they played a really close game against the team that did win the MAC last year. Altmaier's really good. I think going to Lawrence, though, in a much improved Kansas team over the last couple of years, they're favored by 3. It's a coin flip. I think I'm still going to take. Can I take pushes? Is that a coward's way out? I think they could win by. I'm gonna take Kansas -3. I just if that game's in Champaign, I'll go the other way. But I think going to Lawrence and again a shorter week for the Illini, for the Jayhawks too, but they don't have to travel. So I'll take Kansas -3.
Take as low as $34 according to this website I'm on. So if you guys want to make a trip,
I've got an update on cheaper tickets coming up for another game. It's wild.
I'm going to go. I'll jump in front of you, Owen. I'm going to go with Illinois. I think people are overreacting. Like you said, Toledo won the MAC last year, which, the MAC, top to bottom, not a great league, but those top teams can really do it. And I think they're going to contend this year for the MAC title. So I think people are sleeping on Illinois, their defense. I mean, they didn't obviously play. It was their quarterback's first game, Altmaier. I'll take Illinois.
Yeah, I think you are right that this is going to be a popular week to pick Kansas over Illinois, but overall, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I mean, I think looking at Kansas last week, they beat Missouri State. What was it, like 48-17 or something like that. I mean, I feel like Kansas versus Missouri State is typically a game that's like Kansas is lucky if they beat an FCS team.
This is not your 2018 Kansas Jayhawks.
Yeah. And so I think that they still are carrying over that momentum that they started with last year and playing at a home game. Kyle Knock earlier today said that he remembers when he was playing at Iowa State that he would go to some Jayhawk games where there were 1,500 people in the stands.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was
just
rough
brutal.
there for a while.
But I think Kansas is building something good, and so I'll take Kansas in that one.
Tough to have Illinois go at 0-2, but that's just a tough task.
They did win.
Oh, they did win.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Feels like a loss, I know.
Feels like it. I apologize.
Yeah,
Boy,
1-1.
Again, we went 3-15 last week. We don't even know what we're talking about sometimes. Next game.
Next game is the big noon kickoff. The surprise of the week, Colorado Buffaloes, number 22, probably kicked Iowa out of the rankings. Thanks, Buffs. Thanks, Dion. They are 3-point favorites at home against Nebraska.
Just
$330 tickets there.
Yeah, those prices are nuts. Yeah, I was honestly surprised Colorado only jumped to 22nd. Not that I would have put them super high, but I thought it would just be this massive overcorrection of what they did, how they looked, and everything. This feels like a bit of a trap because all of a sudden they go from being the 3-touchdown dog to now being, and again, they're home, but a favorite against a Nebraska team that had every opportunity to win that game in Minnesota. Jeff Sims looks like the guy for sure, even with 3 turnovers. I mean, he's a weapon coming from Georgia Tech, and he looked like he's going to make some noise as well. I'm still going to take Colorado to cover just because I can't imagine them not. Dion keeps receipts, so I'm just going to keep picking Dion. And again,
do you believe
Nebraska coming into Folsom Field? I can't fathom this game has been circled for so long of Dion's home debut. I can't imagine them not winning and winning pretty convincingly. Matt Rule would then be starting 0-2. I got that record right.
Future Big Ten, Big 12 matchup, I suppose. Former and future Big Ten. Well, former Big 12 matchup, I guess.
I don't know what conferences are.
I mean, can you guys explain to me, as somebody who's setting betting lines, why Colorado is only a 3-point favorite? I mean, is it just
because they were 1-11 last year?
Yeah, still just. Points. I mean, gosh, just the way that they looked compared to.
But that's why it almost feels suspicious, right? You're like,
it's true. But yeah, I think that Colorado's going to win that game.
I do think it'll be lower scoring than we saw in Fort Worth. I think that Nebraska defense is really good. I think Minnesota can score a few more points. We'll talk about them against EMU coming up. But
yeah,
I think that Nebraska defense is pretty good.
One of the reasons I think it's so low is because Colorado did allow like 42 points against TCU with new quarterback. They only had 3 returning starters on offense.
That's true.
So I think that plays with it. I think Nebraska's going to be able to move the ball more than they did on Minnesota. I'm going to take Colorado too. I think that offense isn't a fluke. Sanders.
Yeah. You don't have 4 100-yard receivers as a fluke.
Early, Dylan Edwards they all look really good.
Yeah. Got to be thinking potential Rashawn Salam territory here. Shedeur Sanders, early season Heisman potential favorite.
Also, we talked about not having a both ways guy since Chris Gamble, and we totally forgot about Jabril Peppers.
Oh,
was
that's
like
right.
in the last decade.
He didn't play as much as Travis Hunter,
Not
right?
as much, but he was a Heisman finalist because
112 plays or something like that Travis Hunter played for Colorado. That can't keep up every week, but
or can it? Did you not hear about the receipts, Mike?
We're going to land those dream jobs in Denver one day.
These kids
and
are
then
conditioned.
He's coming after us.
all right. Next game is 11 a.m. kick. Purdue at Virginia Tech. This is an interesting one.
This is super interesting. Again, an 0-1 Purdue team after that loss to Fresno State, which one of us picked. Prognostication right there.
3-point favorites.
3-point favorite. I can't see Purdue going 0-2. I think it'll be tough, so I'm going to take Purdue plus the 3. Maybe they keep it within a field goal and still drop one on the road. Virginia Tech's a pretty good team. But Hudson Card, he's too good, I think, to go to 0-2.
Yeah. Even though I know Old Dominion is sometimes a respectable team to play, I mean, 36-17 over them is, I don't know, underwhelms me a little bit if you're Virginia Tech. I really like Purdue to beat him.
I'm going with Purdue, too. All right, I'm going to skip over. We'll do Iowa State last. UTEP at Northwestern at 2:30. UTEP is a 1.5-point favorite on that one.
So tickets to this game are as low as $3.
Count me in. Is that Chicago?
Yeah.
If I didn't have plans this weekend,
I didn't know
You'll pay $50 per parking in Evanston and then get in the game for $3.
This is like a Kansas City
Uber will
Royals
cost you more.
Buck Night situation where they're just trying to get anybody in the stadium.
I'm going to take Northwestern plus the 1.5. Again, Ben Bryant looked decent. Rutgers just had this ridiculous game plan where I think it was in The Athletic. There's a really fascinating article of they just milked the clock as much. I think they had the ball for 13.5 minutes in the first quarter by design. Like they forced a 3 and out and then just had 2 drives and the second one went into the second quarter. So they were all about ball control. Rutgers is a fun team to watch if you like that, just kind of like very strategic offensive layout. But I think, again, I think Northwestern will get a few more wins than people are thinking this year. So I'll take them plus the 1.5. I'd expect them to win.
I go with Northwestern, too.
Go ahead.
I think UTEP, I mean, they lost that first game to Jacksonville State, who was an FCS. Coached by Jerry Kill. Is that right?
No, that's New Mexico State.
Dang it.
Another Big Ten coach, though.
Yeah.
Former Big Ten coach.
I'm blanking on who it is.
Rich Rodriguez.
Oh, Rich Rod. No, I didn't know that.
3 and Out by John U. Bacon. Book recommendation for the weekend about his 3 years in Ann Arbor. Really fascinating book.
Yeah, UTEP, they lost that opening game to a new FBS program and only beat Incarnate Word 28-14 last week. Obviously, I didn't watch that, but I will take Northwestern to get their first win of the year, maybe their only win.
You're not enough of a degenerate to be watching a little UTEP action. Northwestern got Duke next week, by the way.
Game looks a lot tougher.
Yikes. Yeah, I guess I would say, who'd you pick?
Northwestern.
Okay. I guess I'll take UTEP just to be a little contrarian. I think they're recovering after that loss to Jacksonville State.
All right, next game is Wisconsin on the road. They're in Pullman, Washington. Wisconsin's a 6.5-point favorite against Washington State. Washington State beat them last year.
Speaking of Incarnate Word, a young man named Cameron Ward, who was a monster at Incarnate Word as a freshman and sophomore, transferred to Wazoo last year following I believe either his head coach or his OC. This kid is special. I mean, people talk about in Washington State, in the state of Washington, I should say, Michael Penix being a dark horse Heisman. If Cameron Ward can do what he did 2 years ago at Incarnate Word, he had kind of a transitionary year last year. He had 47 touchdowns passing for Incarnate Word in 2021. He had a great start to this season. I'm taking Wazoo plus 6.5. I wouldn't be surprised if they win again. This kid can cook. I think he and Tanner Mordecai are going to have some field days out there throwing it around. But I'm going to take Cameron Ward. This kid is super, super special. Ton of fun to watch. So I'll take them in Pullman.
Yeah, playing it on the Palouse. That's always going to be advantage Cougs. Wisconsin, another win over a MAC school over the weekend. They beat Buffalo. Wisconsin had 2 rushers with 100-plus yards and 2 touchdowns each. But I feel like I was touting up Wisconsin's defense in the preseason too. But I don't know. You might be selling me on this one, Mitch, especially playing the home game.
Go watch this kid's tape. He's fun.
Playing this at home in Pullman, I think that could be the deciding factor here. So yeah, I'll take Washington State.
Yeah, all that talk about the air raid, and they rushed more than they ran. Obviously, they played Buffalo, Wisconsin. So I think I'm going to take the Cougs too. I think everyone understates how hard it is to go west and for a road game, especially in the non-conference, when you're not in the thick of the season. So as much as my heart says just take the Big Ten team, I'm going to take the Cougs. And we've got one more game for Iowa State. It's Eastern Michigan versus Minnesota. Minnesota's 20.5-point favorite.
I'm going to take EMU to cover just because that's a massive spread, and I think we all took Iowa to cover -23 against Utah State. Eastern Michigan featuring former Iowa running back Samson Evans. I believe he's a senior there. Former Drake head coach Chris Creighton has been building something decent in Ypsilanti. I mean, compared to when I
they
was
were
covering the MAC
for a long
and
time.
Ron English was there, that was a really tough program.
Yeah.
So they've certainly gotten better. Obviously, PJ Fleck familiar with Eastern Michigan from his time coaching at Western Michigan. It's a directional reunion. Call your friends, call your family, bring them in. I think Minnesota still wins handily, but maybe just by 20 and not that 21. Ethan Kaliak-Manis showed he can throw the ball. He's got, again, Daniel Jackson and some great weapons around there. Sean Tyler, I think this is Sean Tyler doing a little more on that offense than Ethan Kaliak-Manis throwing it around. So it might be a little more ground and pound, more than we saw last week against Nebraska for the Gophers.
Yeah, I think Eastern Michigan could keep this within 20 points, possibly. Again, just for Michigan's sake, just like not needing to win this game by a million. But Eastern Michigan, by the way, just beat Howard, whom also will play Northwestern down the road. Right. Possible win for them. I like Minnesota to win, but I think that Eastern Michigan keeps it within 20.
I'm going to go Minnesota. I'm going to be the opposite one here. I think they're probably going to just roll. You know, they didn't have.
Wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. Tickets low as $10 though if you want to go to Minneapolis.
Man.
How do we? Y'all are.
I'm just on the ESPN website.
Road trips.
All right, so the big one of the week, at least for us, is the Cyhawk game. Iowa's traveling to Iowa State. Line moved up to, I think it was 2.5 earlier in the week, but it's 4 now in favor of the Hawkeyes. Over under 6.5 or 36.5. That'd be funny if it was 6.5.
And also intriguing.
Who you got?
Iowa minus the 4. I think Kyler pointed to it, and this was, I kept thinking about this a lot, and we talked about it on Sunday too. Just to play against an up-tempo offense in that kind of heat, I mean, that's the ultimate litmus test for a defense. I had to bail out of this analogy when I was talking to Kyler about it. He gave me kind of a look. You saw at the beginning of the soundbite, he was laughing. But I was like, yeah, that feels like kind of you're standing in the on-deck circle with the donut on the baseball bat, and like everything gets easier after that. And he kind of gave me one of those looks. I'm like, here's what I'm trying to ask. And I do feel like that defense ran around for 72 plays against this offense that doesn't give you a whole lot of breaks. It's going to be cooler in Ames, maybe a little slower pace. I think Iowa's defense is conditioned, again, against a quarterback who's only going to make his second career start. They could have a big day. I think we'll see maybe a little bit more out of the Iowa offense. I would expect Caleb Johnson to maybe have a little more success. I mean, had a big run there, obviously had the big kickoff return, but maybe a little closer to what people are asking for. I don't think the O-line's that far off when it comes to run blocking, and pass protection was really good against Utah State. So I'll take Iowa to cover, and I think they take the Cyhawk Trophy back to Iowa City.
Yeah, Cyclone fans, I think, are feeling a little bit too confident after that win over Northern Iowa. Boy, they're Cyclone Larry's out there talking a big game after, after that one.
Oh, Lair.
Jake Brin, good buds with Cyclone Larry, who apparently went to my high school, he tells me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, many years younger than myself, but a fellow former BCLEW Comet. But yeah, as I alluded to earlier, I think that Iowa's going to win this game by a bunch, get up and just put their foot on the gas and keep it on cruise control.
I think it's going to be a close game. I'm taking Iowa State with the points, but I think Iowa wins. So I think it's a field goal. I am a little concerned. I guess we could have talked about this with the punting game. Tory had one blocked and almost had a few other ones.
Remember that there's a kid from Utah State, though, that had like 3 or 4 last year alone. And I think he's the guy who got the hand on this.
Is he a punt block specialist?
Pay the man. Pay him. Whatever you can do.
But it is concerning. Hopefully that's not an issue, but that could flip a game right on, right over.
We saw it in 2019 what can happen on special teams
Yeah.
as well, and how many times has this come down to a field goal. So, yeah, it's cliche, but it's kind of true. Like, forget about what you did last week or who's supposed to do what. It's the Cyhawk game. It's good, clean fun. Just going to get out there and rep for your set of state however you can. Remember, we will have the live reaction podcast again on Sunday at noon, breaking down everything. Thanks to everybody who was in there. This past Sunday, I believe we peaked at 24 live viewers, so that's
Our favorite
that's
24
awesome.
people
Yeah,
in Iowa and Utah.
Our favorites. Yeah, there was that one Utah guy. If he wants to come back, that's fine. Whatever. I'm over it.
Boost the numbers.
Anyways, speaking of boosting numbers, follow us on Twitter at Eye on the Hawks, the Iowa News Now YouTube and Instagram feeds where you can find more clips. And again, that live show coming up on Sunday. But all eyes on Saturday at Jack Trice as we get ready for the Cyhawk. For Mike and Owen, I'm Mitch. We'll see you back here Sunday. Whatever side you're rooting for, do it loudly, do it safely. We'll see you back here.
I just hope we all have fun.
There you go.